Check the description for the following discount codes. This is a very interesting product and something I've been curious about for a number of years. We've got other things like Track IR that do head tracking. This Tobii Eye Tracker 5 does exactly what it says on the box. It tracks your eyes in addition to your head, and this is of course the 5th iteration. Now, I've never tried anything with head tracking before. Obviously I've got virtual reality, I've got triple screen set up, and I've done plenty of single screen sim racing. And whilst this doesn't exclusively support sim racing, it's good for first person shooters, it's good for all genres, all different genres of gaming, and it has a huge library of games that it does support. All, this information is available on the Tobii website. But for sim racing, one of the things we lack when playing on a single screen is the ability to look, let's say we're in the left seat of the car, look left at our mirror, look up to the right at our rear view mirror, and look far across to the passenger side mirror. Now, the only way you can kind of get this on a single screen setup is if you are using a really large single screen. If I'm playing on my 86-inch screen downstairs, then I have a wide enough field of view whereby I can see all 3 mirrors. But not everyone has an 86-inch screen to sim race on, and of course in reality I don't. I use triples, which solves that problem for me. It allows me to look literally over my shoulder and see cars coming up alongside me. Now, I was always very, very curious about this because the idea in my head of looking at a screen in front of me and then either turning my head a little bit and the world, so I turn my head left, the world comes in right towards it, and the two kind of meet up. Your eyes and the game world meet up at a fixed point determined by the software and kind of the acceleration of the movement. And I thought, how is that going to work? Is it going to make me feel motion sick? Is there really a benefit to it? Is it going to feel unnatural with, your head moving a little bit and the world moving a lot? Because obviously it can't be one-to-one, because otherwise you would look to the edge of your screen and you'd just see the edge of the screen because nothing would move. So there is some sort of multiplication going on here, acceleration as I referred to a minute ago. But the answer is it works really, really well. I was actually very, very surprised. I thought I wouldn't like it because of all the things I just said. I thought, that's going to feel a bit weird. It's going to feel a bit unnatural. You're going to have to train your head not to look, as far as you would do naturally and all this sort of thing. Not the case. Whilst it does take a little bit of getting used to, once you are used to it, and it doesn't take very long at all, it works superbly with some limitations. Now, Tobii sponsored this video, so they've asked me to show you the software and a couple of other little bits. So I wouldn't normally go through the software because it can be a little bit boring, but as they've asked me to do it, I will do it. So the installation itself is super simple. Once you unbox it, it comes nicely packed. You get it out of here, the main device itself is there, and this is that main device. Very slim and with quite a short USB cable. Now it does also come with a 1 meter extension, which you'll definitely need to use unless your PC is particularly close to your display. We have, now what different cameras do we have on here? It shows us on the back of the box. We have 2 infrared illuminators which are at each end, and then we have in the middle a Windows Hello sensor and then the eye tracking sensor itself. I'll just show you that on the back of the box in case you're curious. The device itself feels really premium, really well made. It is aluminium, so it's been finished well. There is a magnet, 2 magnets in the center at the back there, because the way you can affix it to your monitor, unless it's a curved monitor, this won't work, you'll understand why in a minute, is by sticking this on the bottom of the monitor. It's a magnetic strip, and it will of course then stick to that. Now it needs to be a flat surface for this to stick to, so if you've got a curved display like I have here, you can't stick this unless you could bend it a little bit, but then Would the magnets get close enough to hold it on? Who knows? Now the tracking has no issues with curved display. In fact, the tracking couldn't care less what display you have, whether it's curved, whether it's big, whether it's small. But there are some limitations that I will get into in a bit. But yes, the device itself, very sleek, slim, tidy. I like the aesthetic of it, and it's really well made. So that is good. And I do like the magnetic mounts. You actually get two, so you can mount them on two different displays should you want to use this on two different displays. And the software allows you to quickly change displays if you are using more than one. You can just click on, new display and calibrate it quite quickly. So this is what you get out of the box. You also get a little wipe for preparing your surface to put the self-adhesive magnets on it, and then there's a little mounting bracket you could use here as well. So when you plug this in fact, let me show you, because the instructions that we get are kind of, they are attached to the box. I was going to say kind of attached to the box. They're 100% attached to the box. There's a little getting started in the middle there. You lift the tab up, and then your instructions are on the inside there. And you literally do as it says. You connect it, it automatically installs the Tobii Experience software, which is interesting because you don't get a visual acknowledgement that it's installing anything. It just fires up on the screen. At least the second time I plugged it in, it did. The first time it didn't. And then, as it says, you mount it using your magnetic strip, and then you calibrate it and you register if you want to. So let me show you that setup software now. As I say, this is a sponsored video by Tobii, so there's a couple of things they've specifically asked me to do, so I shall do them. My opinions, of course, are always my own, as you would expect from me on this channel. So, where is your eye tracker? If you haven't attached it, attach it. The two lines it's showing you here match up with two lines on top of the tracking unit itself, as pictured, in fact. So you adjust them as necessary. Do as you're told, sit up right in front of the screen. Click done. And then what we get here is like a little 2-dot representation of my eyes. It says see how much you can move around. I didn't really move around that much, but you can see a little bit there. It doesn't give you very long. And then you go into the calibration process. And as it says here, you look at each dot, just stare at it till it explodes like that. 1 in the center, 3 around the outside edges. Of course, this is literally just a calibration process, and it goes through this a couple of times. If you were to change displays, move it to another display, this is what you would then do again to calibrate it for that new display. And that's it. You input a profile username, which obviously I input as Carl Gosling, and that is the hardware installation side of things all done. Nothing else you have to do. What you have to do now is get their Game Hub downloaded and installed. So once you've installed the Experience, you then click on Game, download Game Hub for free. I don't think they really needed to tell us it was free, but you download the Game Hub and you get it installed. It just takes you a link to the Tobii website, and you just follow the on-screen prompts. No big deal. Desktop shortcut, start menu shortcut, continue, agree to the T&Cs, and that is the Game Hub installed. Then, for certain titles, you require another piece of software. I know this sounds a bit ball achy, but it isn't, called OpenTrack. And for ACC, for example, I needed OpenTrack. And when you go down here and you click on settings, it will tell you that you need to follow the setup guide online, which is on the Tobii website, and it takes you to it. That then directs you to download and install OpenTrack. And literally, step by step, from how to download it to how to install it, and then what settings you need to use with it as well. Literally everything you need, you just follow what's on the screen in front of you. It wasn't difficult. And once that's done, that is literally everything from a software point of view. There's nothing else you need to do. Everything's calibrated, everything's set up, job done. Now, for me, When I then tried to run ACC for the first time, it didn't work. The game loaded and the Tobii software was working and OpenTrack was running, but there was no head eye tracking whatsoever. I closed the software down, I restarted it, I closed the game down, I restarted it. None of that worked until I restarted my PC. Restarted the PC, worked perfectly ever since. So, should you have any issues with this, restart the PC. Standard, turn it off, turn it on again, behavior, and whatever that little issue was, it was solved. For ACC specifically, you have to have OpenTrack running before you load the game. For other titles that are directly supported by Tobii or that they support Tobii directly, you don't have to use OpenTrack. So, before we get into some footage of me in ACC, I just want to show you how fast the tracking speed of this really is. Now, like I say, it uses infrared sensors, probably a bit like night vision, which also means it works in low light conditions without any trouble, but it means it won't work in direct sunlight very well at all, if at all. A bit like tracking on the Meta Quest headsets, infrared. You know, sunlight hits the IR, it just floods it with IR. It can't see what's going on. So good for low light, bad for daylight sunlight. Direct sunlight anyway. But yeah, take a peek at this little clip here. This is me turning on preview my gaze, and sorry, that I shouldn't laugh, previewing people's gaze. Yeah, preview my gaze, and that is the speed it is tracking my eyes at. There is absolutely no delay that I could perceive between my eyes moving and that tracking them. I was super impressed with this, like super impressed with it. Obviously I've got an ultra wide screen, which is why there's black bars top and bottoms in that footage. That's really impressive. When we move into Assetto Corsa, you'll see that you can look around the car like you can in VR to a certain extent. It's really quite impressive, but of course you must keep your eyes on the screen in front of you. So when you see me looking up and down and left and right, if I was to actually, turn away and look 90 degrees to my left, or 90 degrees up or down, I would see my lap, I would see the ceiling, and I would see the size of my room. But you can see just how much you can really look around inside the car. And for sim racing, we don't really want to look around inside the car. It's just a novelty. What we want to do is be able to look around the apex for corners, check our mirrors, both side mirrors and rear view mirror, when we are using a display that is small enough whereby we can't see these things normally. That is why you can have, virtual mirrors in certain sim racing titles put on the screen for you, because you can't see, if you've got your field of view set correctly for the distance you're sat from your display and the size of your display, most times you won't see all of your mirrors. You might see one and maybe half the rear view mirror, or you might see none at all. So what got me the most with this is just how easy it was to just glance. Like, I'm driving along, and I'm using an Xbox pad in this footage, by the way, because I didn't want to set up a sim rig at my desk, and it wouldn't have worked actually, and I'll tell you why in a bit, because I also wanted to try it on a larger TV, which you'll also see in a bit. Yeah, what impressed me the most was that I could just glance in the direction of where my wing mirror should be in the real world, and the display or the rendered image moved to meet my vision where I was looking. It just worked perfectly. So you imagine you're driving along and you just want to glance to the left to look at your wing mirror, or glance to the right to look at your wing mirror, or up and to the right to your rear view mirror, or up and to the left, depending left or right hand drive. It just felt natural, and it works really well. In ACC, there was what I felt to be a slight delay between me moving and it catching up with me. I haven't looked at the footage yet, so I don't know if it's visible in the footage. Whereas in the tracking sort of demo I showed you earlier, where it's following my gaze around the screen, there was no latency, no delay, no nothing. So I don't know if that's just ACC, there's an additional layer of software in between the Tobii software and the game that perhaps adds that fraction of a delay in. It wasn't enough to be a problem, but it was just something I noticed after being so impressed with how quickly it followed my eyes, you know, in that sort of test setup screen. So I think personally, if you haven't got a triple screen setup, if you don't use VR and you can afford £223, which is what this is currently going for on the Black Friday deals, I think it is a bit of a game changer and almost a no-brainer. Now, because that's how impressed I was with it, you know, genuinely, you can just, like, I can see my mirrors that I couldn't see before. You can look, you know, fully to your left and to your right in the game and see cars coming alongside you. You are turning your head a little bit further than perhaps you might do. So your head might be pointing left, but your eyes are kind of looking at that corner of the screen. So it works, but it's a bit more unnatural than like glancing at the mirrors is, for example. But it does work and you do get used to it. Anyway, limitations. I mentioned I wanted to try it on a bigger screen. I have a 65-inch screen there sat in front of that sofa, and I'll put some footage of me up, you know, trying to set this up. The issue I had and what I've discovered is that the sensor doesn't really like to be much further away than one of my arm's lengths, which is about, what am I, 180, about 90. So 80 to 90 centimeters seems to be about as far away as you want to be from this sensor bar. It also needs to be as high as possible, because what you've got to remember is it's looking for your eyes. Now, the cameras presumably are not massively high resolution, and being infrared, there will be a loss of detail compared to a full color camera. So I think it needs to be fairly close to get good, reliable tracking, because I couldn't get it to calibrate while sat on the sofa there. And I'm only 1.5 meters away, 1.5 meters, maybe, yeah, 1.5 meters to 2 meters away from where the sensor bar was. It couldn't see my eyes. It kept saying, move closer, move closer. So I moved closer until it could see my eyes. And I was about 1 meter then. I then tried to do the calibration, and that kept failing because it couldn't see that where I was looking. I moved closer still, and it worked perfectly, no problem at all. Again, about an arm's length away. So, if you've got a big screen, like if you're a sim racer in the front room, or even like up here, where I've got a 65-inch sat there, and you would naturally sit a bit further away from that 65-inch or whatever size TV it might be, you need to move closer for this to work. The other issue with having a large screen is that when you then want to look to the extremities of that large screen, and this is amplified by being closer, your head movements are greater. It's like sitting at the front of the cinema versus sitting at the back of the cinema. If you're at the back of the cinema, you can probably just move your eyes and see the corners of the cinema screen. If you're in the front row, you're like this, watching what's going on because you're so close to the screen. And large head movements like that do not work well. You end up moving way too far. Now, some games you can adjust this, others you can't. ACC, for example, I couldn't find anywhere to adjust that sort of acceleration or movement. I didn't try too hard because the real issue is that you can't sit close enough for it to be comfortable to work anyway, so it'd be pointless trying to turn that down when I'm sitting way too close for me to be comfortable. So big screens can be a problem. The distance you are from the sensor can be a problem, has to be right. And also the height as well. When I tried it kind of probably, I don't know, below chest height maybe. Well, yeah, probably, in fact, probably just above sort of, how can I explain this? If I'm seated and you picture where my waist is, just above my waist height, but out in front of me, that didn't work very well. Again, it makes sense because the cameras are here, so in an ideal world you want them pointing straight at your eyes. Obviously that would be in the middle of your display, so you're never going to do that. So the way they tell you to configure it being stuck to the bottom of your display makes perfect sense, especially if it's a small display and it's not, the bottom of it isn't going to be miles away. But they are some of the limitations. Now, for me, I think perfect use case for this is desk mounted sim racers, people, you know, racing table clamped, or if you're on a rig and you have your display really quite close to you. The only issue with that is if it's a big display, the bottom of it is going to be down below the back of your wheelbase, and that's where you'd want to fit that, and it wouldn't be able to see you. If you've got a big letterbox massive ultra wide, you'd probably be fine, because the bottom of the ultra wide is only going to be sort of here-ish, because the whole monitor is only like that. These are all things that just need to be sort of thought about before you think, well, you know, is this for me? There are workarounds though that I discovered. This does not have to be fixed to your monitor for it to work, right? So if you've got a big display, and let's say you use, I don't know, a PlaySeat Challenge or the new GT Amiga Sprint foldable cockpit, and you set it up in front of your huge, you know, 80-inch display in your front room. There's no point having this on the display because you're going to be nowhere near it. It will never see you. But you can put it on your rig. You can put it, if you want, on the top of your wheelbase within a couple of feet of your face. Literally, just stick it, Velcro it on the top of your wheelbase. The software and the Tobii device don't care how far away you are from the display, because all this needs to do is be able to see your eyes and watch where they're looking. And when you calibrate your eyes in the software by looking at your display, the sensors here are simply watching how far your eyes travel and in which direction. So I tried this out to confirm it, by the way. I had this literally just sat on top of a roll of filament for my 3D printer, so it was at the correct height, but like 3 foot away from this desktop screen in front of me. And it worked absolutely fine once calibrated, no issues whatsoever. So don't think if you have a large display or a foldable cockpit that you can't use it. You'll just need to mount this so that it's about yay far from you, as I say, on top of your wheelbase, because on top of your wheelbase, you can't really go under the wheelbase because your arms would block the cameras. And I mean, even on top of the wheelbase, you may get some blockage from your steering wheel. If you've got a round wheel, if it's an open wheel and the sensor sits there, only up and down, it'll probably be all right. But these are all things you can experiment with. Or failing that, you know, you can, if you've got a static cockpit, monitor mounts, big display, you can perhaps use some alley profile or whatever to mount this somewhere, you know, in between where you can get it to work. Somewhere that's not going to be obstructive of your vision, but that's close enough for it to work. As I say, it doesn't have to be at eye height. That would be perfect. You know, being down, you know, yay far is okay as well. But they are the limitations, and that's why I say like desk use is perfect for people that play first-person shooters and what have you. You've got no worries because you're sat at your desk, it's on your monitor there, and like you're buzzing away. And it also has this ghost bubble feature, which streamers can use, whereby your viewers will have a little ghost bubble that shows exactly where your eyes are looking during your stream as well. Again, nice feature for first-person shooter streamers maybe, so you can watch your favourite first-person shooter where he's looking at the enemies and how quickly he gets them after he locks onto them. Useful. Not so much for sim racing, and I'm not a sim racing streamer anyway. So, I think that pretty much covers everything. We've gone through the setup, we've gone through the hardware itself, we've gone through the pros and cons, we've gone through the price. There will be a link in the description should you want to click through and buy one on this Black Friday sale. As always, I look forward to hearing people's thoughts in the comments, but I was actually super impressed. I didn't think I was going to like it, but the moment I started using it, even though I was racing using an Xbox controller, the ability just to glance at my mirror and I'm looking at my mirror. Like it wasn't on screen, now it is. Same with the rear view, and even a little bit more to the left to see cars coming down was a bit of a game changer, I'll be honest. I was more impressed than what I thought I would be. But yeah, bear in mind the limitations. Can't use it on a big screen, can't use it too far away without some sort of ingenuity as to where you're going to mount it. Anyway, thank you to Tobii for sending it over. Thank you to Tobii for sponsoring the video. And thank you guys, as always, for watching. Take it easy.